Cool. I think we are live. Hey everyone, welcome to our Growing Your Audience webinar. Happy Friday. Hope you all are doing well. We have an amazing guest with us today, Cheryl. I think Cheryl is tuning in from New York. We're going to give people just a few minutes to filter in. So while we're taking these first few minutes, if you just want to let us know where you're tuning in from in the chat, that'd be great. I'm Tim. You've probably seen me on one of these webinars before if you've joined us before in the past. I'm based out here in LA. Sunny Los Angeles.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm in New York, like a little north of New York City, and I'm jealous of all that sun that's coming in through that window. Kind of ridiculous, to be honest. Cleveland, okay. Right in the middle. Gotta love that.
Just out there. We were out there last year for the NEVA conference, the National Independent Venue Association conference, and they had a little thing at the Rock and Roll Museum. It's a cool place. It was my first time there.
I was in Cleveland when I took a train across the country. It's where I wrote my album that got nominated for a Grammy. And the Cleveland stop in particular, it's at like 3 a.m. And but like you wake up at every stop because it's just so loud. And I remember looking out and be like, there's nothing here except you could see the signs for the stadium. And I was like, okay, that's the thing. And then we just kept on going. Salt Lake City, Dorothy gets the jealousy, totally. Austin in New York City proper, awesome. Dallas, they're getting the sun there. Greece.
Oh yeah.
That's where I did my first New Age record, is in Greece. That's awesome. Rio de Janeiro. Oh, look at us all all over the world.
Yeah, international.
Love it. So fun.
Hey Dorothy, thanks for joining us again. Hey Kylie, Juan.
Tahoe's cold. That's true. Tahoe's like always cold. Love that.
Oh, I love how international this crowd is.
Cool. Uruguay. I love saying that.
Yeah, never been out there. I'd love to though.
Everyone's cold with me. Well, I'm not cold. I'm actually in a sweater. I dress appropriately. I know how to dress for the weather, so I'm rarely actually cold. I just, not getting the sunshine. All right. I feel like we should go. I'm not a waiter.
Yeah, should we do it? Okay, we can get started. Again, welcome everybody to our Growing Your Audience webinar. I guess the subtitle of this webinar is More Listeners, More Fans, and How to Communicate with Them. So hopefully at this end of this webinar, you will have a better idea on how to approach these things, how to approach growing your audience, how to approach growing your listeners, your fans, how to communicate with them, and also give you tactics to try and employ that'll hopefully make this process easier for you and give this process of gaining fans and growing your audience more longevity, as it relates to you. We have our guest Cheryl today. Cheryl, do you want to introduce yourself?
Surely. I'm Cheryl. I am a composer and songwriter, and I've been an independent musician for like almost 20 years. My first record came out in 2004, so that's a long time ago. I started in the pop world. My first job was, my first job out of college was scuba diving for the government, doing water quality research. But after that, I got into commercials and writing music for commercial music. And then worked at a really beautiful studio in New York City and was like, I'm going to put some songs together and make some records and like get a band together. And I started touring. I've toured all over America and Europe. Been to Switzerland 7 times just to tour. And that one thing led to another. And I started getting different film jobs, different speaking engagements, talking at South by Southwest about what it looks like to be a full-time independent music creator, because I left the jingle job to kind of go full in indie artist. Then started to look at my own personal growth. I was struggling with anxiety and I started to look for music to kind of help me calm that, but I couldn't find anything. So I started making albums. I mean, I was a biology major in college and a music major. So I started to look at the biometrics of anxiety and heart rate and creating pieces that would like latch on to the anxiety and then slow down so you could sort of listen and slow down your heart rate and other things. So that was my first New Age album, which was my 5th album overall. And it hit #1 on all the charts, Amazon, iTunes, all these things. And I was like, am I a New Age artist? And so that was several years ago. I've done 2 since. And the last one I did I created this ambient electronic album on a cross-country train. after my best friend had passed away. He and I wrote a musical together, and it was just like a very big collaborative, like just a beautiful human in my life. And that album got nominated for a Grammy this year. So in New Age. So that's my kind of, I do a lot of things. I write music for social justice choirs, and having done a lot of training to be able to speak to musicians around marketing. And I use myself as a guinea pig. I started in the Key of Success, where I host some courses on email marketing and fan engagement, as well as a mastermind I've been running for 7 years called Amplify. And I am a certified trauma-informed coach. So when I say I coach musicians, I actually am coaching them. I'm not just giving them advice, which is you hear a lot of people say that they're a musician coach in this industry, but most of them are actually not. So I am, and I bring that into my own life as I keep trying out new stuff to see what works and do more of that. So that's me.
Amazing. Cheryl, we're super excited to have you on. Me personally, I think the fact that you've had so much longevity in the music industry is something that I'm really excited to talk to you about.
Yeah, thank you. No, thank you. I appreciate it. No, I got it. Longevity in the industry also means like you're really old, girl. Okay, carry on. Yeah.
Know that you've been successful for so many years, and also, I think like when I talk and think about growing our audience, growing your audience for musicians, the examples I draw from are usually, larger mainstream pop acts, just because that's what we are exposed to in my media consumption usually. And so I think, having someone like you on who's really been able to, carve out, your own niche in new age music, and something that is a little bit different than, these sort of like pop music case studies that everybody talks about is really exciting for us. And yeah, Cheryl, if you wanted to just drop a couple of links into the chat for the stuff that you're involved with, go check it out. Cheryl is an amazing resource.
This is in the Key of Success is basically like the portal. When you go here, you can sign up to get a mini course that's really, it's like one of the most awesome frameworks of getting really clear on what's next. That was the biggest issue for me, is like, how do I know what's next? What should I focus on? What do I need to build in order to do X, Y, like what comes first? Like there's so many ways to go. So the tool that gets you, once you sign up for the portal and get in, it's a 2-step process. That's the thing. If you're curious about me, like my musician site, I'll put that on there too. Is cbemusic.com, and on Instagram, I'm cbemusic. And you can also follow both of those websites are also my Instagram handles. In the Key of Success, if you want some musician tips, CBE Music, if you want more pictures of my dog.
Amazing. Well, cool. Yeah, let's jump in. The first thing I wanted to start with talking about is what growing your audience means. I think a lot of musicians and a lot of marketers, when they approach this concept of growing your audience for your fans, for your music, a lot of people are preoccupied with social media numbers, DSP numbers. How can I drive up my number of monthly listeners? How can I drive up the number of fans that follow me on Instagram, whatever it is. I think that's something that I wanted to address really quickly, really early on in this webinar, is that growing your audience goes beyond just those social numbers and DSP numbers. We're thinking about growing your audience as, growing the total amount of people who are engaged with your music, and not just people who are engaged with your music, but people who are consumers of your brand, people who are in your sort of larger music ecosystem, people who are not only are not only aware of you, but also are willing to spend money on you, are willing to be part of your sort of musical narrative, people who formed an emotional connection with you. Ultimately, these are the things that bring revenue to your music business, to your music career, and give you longevity as an artist. Things like social numbers, your amount of engagements, your amount of fans can totally be juiced. They can totally be artificially inflated. DSP numbers as well. There's so many shady Russian websites out there where you can just pay someone to drive up your streams. But what does that really help you with? What does that really mean? Does it really benefit your music career in any way? Not really. That's only one part of the equation, right? It's also fairly common to see artists who have massive monthly listenerships on Spotify, 2-3 million monthly listeners who can't sell out rooms, who can't sell out a show, who can't move any merch at all. These types of cases are way more common than you think. So again, when we're talking about growing your audience, it's how can we grow the total amount of people who are engaged with your music in a way that gives your artist career longevity. So in sort of approaching this topic, I've broken down a few sort of main pillars of this concept of growing your audience that I think we can talk about, that are three pillars. I think three parts of the formula of the equation to growing a healthy audience. And these three things are, firstly, growing new listeners. So, we want to increase the amount of new people discovering and hearing your music. This is something that you should be doing constantly throughout your music career. It's even for your largest established artists, someone like a Beyonce, the process of growing your audience never stops, right? It's with an artist like Beyonce, for example, like it's we never seen artists like her just grow their audience once, right? They never just expose their music to new listeners once and just ride on the success of their earlier music. With every single new release, every single sort of stage in their career, they're constantly exposing their music to new audiences, finding new ways to connect with new audiences. And growing the amount of new people that are being exposed to your music with every single release, with every single thing you do, is important.
Can I ask a question here? I'm curious if in the chat box, I can see you can make polls too. I'm curious if everyone listening, just drop a 1 in the chat box if you're someone who wants to has a number goal or wants to see numbers change specifically. On some digital platform, you want to grow your Facebook page, you want to see more Spotify followers, this is a thing that's important to you. It's just, this is sort of a wide net question. I just want to see if we're talking around thing. Okay, yeah, there's some little cascading of ones coming in. So, okay, we want some more something. Got it. Mm-hmm. Great. We want some more something. And the key to me to getting more something is being really specific on why and exactly how many more, right? If you're I want more followers and I go follow you on Spotify, I call this in my Amplify membership, we call it a champagne win. Are we breaking out the champagne? Was it, did we make the goal? We got more, but so what is it really? And I think that's an important thing a filter to kind of listen through as you keep talking, Tim, to be what does that mean for your career? And I know it's different for everyone. It can be different for everyone. So I just want to put that in early on here.
Totally. I think that's super important, Cheryl. And something I'm really glad you brought up is, when you're going about any of these sort of big marketing pushes, to set metrics for yourself, set goals for yourself. Obviously, what success means for someone who's a developing artist is different for what success means for a super large touring artist.
Totally. And it can change too, right? That definition. And really, so we're not really talking about success. We're kind of what's the next milestone that's the most important to you, that's going to move you forward or feel really great or whatever that is. And it could be a financial one. It could, for me last year, it was get nominated for a Grammy. That was, so all of my actions were is this going to support that? Is this going to get me in front of the people that matter in terms of that particular goal? Maybe you have grow your Spotify or grow your email list to 1,000 people. And so what are you talking about in your banter on live shows? If that's your main goal, that's going to dictate, the goal will dictate the actions that you take and how you behave in certain scenarios. And I think that's really important to note. And so many musicians walk around so blindly just saying, I want more numbers, I want more followers, I want more engagement, I want more people to listen. And it's not going to get you anywhere.
Mm-hmm. And I think, to your point, it also helps you evaluate what's working and what's not working.
Totally.
Being able to see that goal and then, going back, reviewing what worked, what didn't work. And it helps you, invest your time and your resources in the right places based off of what's worked. Yeah. So we talked about gaining new listeners, exposing new audiences to your music. The second thing I want to talk about is growing your fan base. So listeners, people who are exposed to your music, who are aware of your music, are different people than fans, right? I define fans as people who have formed a deeper emotional connection with your music, who are willing to support you with their wallets, right? People who are willing to buy your merch, people who are willing to buy tickets to your shows, people who talk about you to their friends, who spread the sort of awareness of your music in their networks. Again, there's plenty of artists out there who have massive monthly listenerships on Spotify, but can't sell out mid-cap rooms. So, how can we convert people who are listeners into fans that will ultimately help the longevity of your
My
music
definition
career?
of a fan is anyone who will do what you ask. So when you have a call to action, will you stream this? Will you buy this? Will you share this with a friend? Will you use this on your next TikTok video? Will you do this? Whatever your call to action is, the will you, your request, they're like, heck yeah, I'm in. So that's my definition of fan, and it can that means it doesn't change, right? Depending on what I'm doing. So sometimes it's financial, sometimes it's not, but they're so invested at this point. They're a fan. They're a yes to whatever you got to ask them.
100%. Yeah, I mean, I think it's really interesting to think about like with your definition, Cheryl, like how we convert people from being, just your random followers on social media, the people who are randomly, that are engaged with you, to people who are actually taking those actions, right? When you ask people to stream, there's this sort of process that we'll talk a little bit about sort of warming up your audience with content, with different things that'll take them from being that person who sees your message and doesn't do anything to, heck yeah, I'm going to stream Cheryl's new song because she asked me to.
Yeah, and that's something I see missing a lot with musicians, is just no one's asking. What you're actually doing, what I see a lot of when I say you, I see like general musicians, indie musicians, is they're just hoping that people will click on the thing. Like, I have a new single out. Okay. That's like a statement, right? Or what I see that's even worse linguistically is like, check out my new single. Like, that's literally a command. You might as well have said, come vacuum my house. Like that's not interesting. So there is science behind asking a question, a yes or no question that people can sort of, their brain will answer automatically. So you want to be like, hey, will you go stream this? Like, this is what this means for me. This is why this exciting. This is why I think you're going to love it, right? Will you do this thing? And I do not see musicians just straight up asking. There's some like, I don't want to be a burden. I don't want to sound like a salesman. That's your stuff. That is your stuff. So that's what you got to clear that out, so that you can really give people an opportunity to be a part of what you're creating.
Totally. I think that's a good segue to, I guess, what I would consider the last pillar of growing your audience, which is we talked about listeners, we talked about fans. Now the last part of it is actually communicating and reaching those fans, right? I think having all the fans in the world is just one element. If you have music out and there's no way of you communicating, hey, I have new music out to all your fans in the world, the music will never be heard, the merch will never be sold, the tickets will never be sold. So how do people find out about your music? How are you able to communicate to them? These are things like, obviously, growing your socials, growing your Spotify numbers, SMS lists, email lists, all of that. And there's also there's a lot of significance and importance to actually owning your audience as well. Owning the ways in which you reach your audience. You never want to be held hostage by social platforms where you need to pay them money to reach your audience. If you have a deal with a label, you never want the label to own the means in which you communicate with your audience, because if things ever go south and that connection with your label, that relationship with your label is broken, you don't want to be left with no ways to reach your audience. So yeah, owning your audience and doing this in an effective and efficient way.
When we say owning your audience, like what we're talking about is like, have an email list that is legal through a platform, not just your Gmail list, because you can't send emails through your Gmail. You can't do it. People need to be able to legally unsubscribe with an unsubscribe button. So like, get an email platform. Absolutely. And I teach a very, very extensive course on that and have lots of resources on emails. I'll drop a link in for some of those for y'all while we go on to the next section here.
Awesome. So one quick question to, before we jump into the next section, Cheryl, I wanted to ask you generally, is there one sort of one challenge that you can talk about, a challenge that you faced when growing your audience and growing your fan base, and how you overcame it, just, over your career. Is there one thing that comes to mind as just a challenge that our attendees, our users may also be facing, and how you overcame
that's a great question. Here's a link to some different templates and different things to help out in your email, depending on what your budget is. But email is really important. I knew email was really important really early on. And one of my first like devastating challenges was being on tour, an eight-day tour, like the whole coast of California, all the way up to Seattle. And then on the last day, our van got broken into and they stole, it was parked in my bass player's brother's driveway, like up against the door. And they stole the suitcase that had the book of the email addresses. We probably had a couple hundred email addresses. And and my keyboard was gone, like all this stuff. I got the keyboard back in like 2 weeks, because not that keyboard, but I had great insurance. But like, I was devastated about losing that email list, because I knew that I would never get all those were new fans. That was my, like the first 200 people that were like, on my email list. So that was a challenge. So being really responsible about like, as soon as I get an email and permission from someone to add them to my list, like they go right into the list. I have backups of that. Like that was that one thing I had to overcome, is really get the system in place so that never happens again. And I think that a second challenge that comes up a lot is like, what do I talk about to my fans when I'm in between projects, and like, how do I not lose fans, and how do I keep their attention, like that sort of conversation, right? And I think that's a really beautiful time for what I call a nurture series, which is basically like the getting to know you and like giving a little bit of a backstory, shining some lights on other people that you love working with, bandmates, other artists that you've opened for, or that you want to open for, getting in, like asking them their opinion on like what's the the next album cover or single cover or something, like sort of doing less promoting and selling. And then that's going to come back and help you, because they're going to have felt like they got to know you. So in the beginning, for a while, I was like, oh my God, I just came out with a record like 6 months ago. I don't really have anything like new to talk about. And I would like freak out. And then I'd just be like, oh, I found this thing. I'll just tell them about this. And like, sort of have like a once a month update that was a little more personal during those times. So I don't know if that answered your question. Like,
no, that's great. I actually, that answered a follow-up question I was going to ask, which is about, how do you keep your fans engaged, right? In between releases, how do you essentially retain their loyalty,
Yeah. Well, I think I can tack onto that. It's like, I think that the purpose of social media is to get people that are not in your world into your world. So if you're not regularly on social media saying, hey, I do more cool stuff and tell more cool stories and over here on email, if you're not doing that regularly, then you're kind of, it's almost like a ticking time bomb, right? Like that day that Instagram and Facebook went down, and like all musicians were like, oh my God, I had a single, and it was a Friday, right? Which is when singles and albums and stuff come out, and everyone's freaking out. I had a single go out that day, and I was like, no problem, because I have an email list, and everyone that's on social media is on my email list. And I was like, boop, 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 send. And everyone knew about my single. And like the rest of the music community was like freaking out because they couldn't post about their single. So in between the times where I'm getting people into my mailing list and I don't have much going on, I actually send my mailing list to my socials. Like, hey, if you just want to see what's happening for me day to day, like I post a lot of stories on my personal CBE music account. Like my dog is very funny and adorable. Like, come on over and like get into like, look what happens like when I'm playing the piano. Like he does this weird thing with his ear, like, so I'll bring them back to socials so that they can really start to see me everywhere. But it's very rare where I'm telling my email list to go to socials. It is in those downtimes. So that's something else that you can do.
Totally. Yeah, that's really great, Cheryl. So I was going to talk about, I guess, of our 3 pillars, increasing new listeners first, before I talked about increasing, growing your actual fans, converting people from listeners to fans. But I think with those great examples that you just gave, Cheryl, I'm gonna switch things around a little bit and talk about growing your fan base first, just because again, those are great examples, and I think it's a good segue to jump into that section. With this process of growing your fan base, right, turning your listeners into fans, I think one concept that I find helpful for visualizing this process is the marketing funnel approach. Which is an approach that's common in consumer behavior marketing psychology, which is, to get people from this point of them being aware of your brand and of your product, of your music, to the point where they are at the bottom, where they are ready to convert, or they are fans, they are ready to buy your merch, buy your ticket, whatever it is. There is a sort of funnel that fans fall through. People who first hear your music, who are just made aware of your music, are at the top of this funnel. This is what we call the sort of awareness phase. You hit fans or users, consumers, with different pieces of content that essentially provide them this, what we call the consideration phase, before they get to the bottom where they're ready to convert. So if you think about the process of, for example, buying a car, you are looking to buy a new car. An advertisement first makes you aware that there is this make and model of car that you previously were not considering. You see more ads on buses, on TVs, online, that tell you about the benefits of this car, how it's the safest, how it's the fastest. And this is when you go from just being aware of the car's existence to moving into this sort of consideration phase, where you're now considering the different merits of the car, until you get to a point, this tipping point, where you've done all the considerations, you're ready to convert, and you're ready to acquire the good. So if you think about fandom in the same way as well, fans really follow this journey as well. They are first, people encounter your music on a playlist. They see an ad for your music. They are just made aware of your brand, of your music. They see content. They see music videos. They see different things that essentially convince them to be a fan. They form an emotional connection with your music over time. Through the things that you're putting out, and then over time they become those fans who are ready to spread the good word about your music, who are ready to again invest monetarily. So I think, again, the sort of marketing funnel approach is a really good way to think about growing your fan base.
Before you go on to another one, let me just pipe in here, because I look at this and I call the fan journey. And one of the reasons why email is so important is there's so much marketing data that shows that someone is much more likely to convert into someone who purchases something from you, like 180% more likely if they're getting one email from you, versus on social media, they need to see something between 9 and 16 times. So you can't just post once, right? So for me, that fan journey is like, I want people to get curious about me enough that they just sign up for my email list. I do not consider them a fan when they sign up for my email list. They are just a subscriber. And then it is my job, through my email writing, to turn them into a fan. And so we call these Rise series, where we get them to go from just a subscriber to someone who's engaged, who's done something. Like, you ask them to follow you on Instagram, you ask them to stream a song, you ask them to download a 99-cent single, right? They become a fan when they do that. And then when they purchase from you, they become a customer. When they purchase again and share your stuff, they start to become a super fan. So they're kind of rising through, and I've got email sequences that help do that in different ways, so that it doesn't feel like you're a car salesman. But I never assume that anyone that engages with me on social media is a fan until they start clicking and doing the things that I ask them to do. Per my definition of a fan is someone who does the things that you ask them to do.
Totally. Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And the sort of actions that you're asking them to take also fit into that sort of nurture phase that you were describing, Cheryl. It's in my sort of description of the marketing funnel, it's that sort of consideration phase, right? It's asking them to take certain actions or serving them certain content that will ultimately form that emotional connection with them. And get them to be that fan, right? That ultimately that fan. Cheryl, I know you talked a little bit about just the different tactics that you use in your nurture phase. So yeah, is there anything else that you wanted to describe, there as sort of tactics that work? I have a few things that I had in mind that I wanted to go over.
Work for what? For growing the fan, getting people in the first place, or keeping them in?
For growing, for the types of content, the types of things that you put out there to turn listeners into fans.
Yeah, the nurture series happens once they're once they're a subscriber. To get people in there in the first place, I kind of look at 3 different ways to do it, and it depends on what you're doing with your music career. The 3 most effective ways that I've seen I've done is one at live shows, and that is being really intentional about like my number was 50% of the room will sign up for my email list. And I usually get a fan that's there in the room to be in charge of the clipboards, because they're going to want to A, impress me, and B, I don't need to be that like, hey, will you sign up for my email list? I don't need to do that. They'll do that for me. I always am talking about it in the banter. Like I will have a free giveaway. Like I'm going to randomly pick someone from clipboard number 2 or however many clipboards I have, right? And you can do a number of things. Like you will win a sweatshirt if you sign up for my email list today, or you can come on stage and like hang out with me on the last song or whatever, depending on like what the crowd is. So I always like run some sort of like real-time contest and talk about like, this is the way I want to connect with you. This is how you get to take me home with you. Right? Is through that connection. So live shows was the most effective way for me to grow my fan base. And I'm telling you, when I was doing pop, when I was touring in like literally in the 2000s, those people are still on my mailing list. When I like did a very hardcore pivot from pop to new age, I was like, I'm going to lose half my list. And they're like, cool, what's up now? Because they were like, now they're just a fan of me, not just the music, right? So live shows, number 1. Running ads, if you're doing it right, if you've got a team behind you, number 2. I've seen that be really effective. I haven't done it a ton, but I know that there are ways to do that, especially when you have music videos. When I had music videos, I was doing more of that. I mean, I still have those music videos, but I'm not making a ton right now. And the third way is cross promotion. And in my email course and in the Mastermind Amplify that I run, I talk about so much about the importance of knowing other musicians who are operating at this level, like not amateur hour. I'm talking about like they have an email list set up and you know that they're going to take care of your fans. So what I do is find another artist that has an email list and say, hey, like next week, I would love to send my fans to you. I think my fans would really love your music. And it doesn't even need to be the same music. Like I could do this with a hip hop artist because my fans, I know, listen to a lot of different music. So it doesn't even need to be music that you like. It should be like good quality music. And so I'll say, hey, I'm going to send my fans to you. Would you want to like sign up for a free song for you? AKA getting my fans on their fan list. I'm like, would you do the same for me? And like, I can write the email. So I set them up so that's really easy. I will write the email and then they can tweak it and put it in their own voice. And then they send this email to their fans being like, hey, I have this new friend, or I just met this person at this conference and she's really awesome. And she got nominated for a Grammy and she's super cool. And she wants to give you a free song. Just click here and tell her where to send it. And that's the language that I hope that collaborator will send out to their list. And then boom, I have some potential fans coming in. Right now, they're just subscribers who are curious and taking the word of someone that they trust, right? And that cross promotion is like insta growth for your fan list. So those are my 3 kind of like live shows, ads, and cross promotion that make me feel like you never need to post on social media if you're cranking at one of those 3 things.
Totally. I think, especially the thing you mentioned about collaborations is really interesting to me. I think, there's a reason why, major labels commission remixes for pop songs in completely different genres for, every single major release that comes out. And it's really because it's an opportunity to expose, your music to an audience that would otherwise be unfamiliar with your music. That's the beauty of collaboration, right? Remixes, collaborations like the ones that Cheryl are describing, sync, is another example of a place where, you're exposing your music to an audience that, would otherwise have not heard your music. These are all great tactics to bring people into that sort of top of funnel that we were describing. And advertising as well is extremely important. Obviously, Found.ee is an ad platform, and we can go on and on about advertising. But I was going to save that for, one of our other webinars at some point during the year, because you guys are probably sick of hearing me talk about advertising. But yeah, figuring out your advertising is extremely important. Figuring out who your target audience is, how to reach them, going beyond just targeting similar artists on Instagram, really digging in and figuring out, who are some potential target audiences? What do they like outside of similar music? Is your target audience a sports enthusiast, a meditation enthusiast? How can you reach those people? All extremely important.
I mean, when I first started doing new age music, I got on so many podcasts that were mental health podcasts, like talking about anxiety and panic attacks and like the role music plays and why I created the album. It was sort of like totally not a music audience, but it was such a cool way to find fans inside of that space. Last year, when I created this album, on this 5-day cross-country train trip, I went on like 10 different travel podcasts. Like, people are obsessed with trains. There's like a Facebook group that has 50,000 people in it. And it's like one of the highest engaged Facebook groups that I'm a part of. And I joined this like train fan Facebook group and went in and posted like, hey, I'm doing this project. Like, I'm going to see if I can create an album in 5 days across the country. And then I had all these people like so excited. And when I asked, I videoed so much of that thing, you know, like the whole train trip, but it was all from the inside of the train. I was like, does anyone have any exterior videos? There were like amateur videographers that took like amazing videos of Amtrak through the Rocky Mountains. And I paid this guy like $50 or something. And like, I made these amazing storytelling videos. And I really think that's the story of creating the album across the train, like across the country, was one of the reasons it got nominated for a Grammy. And that was all from engaging with audiences that were like definitely not my normal audience, right? Like, totally find like, what's the angle for this project, for this piece of music, for this single, for this album, and see what is outside of the box. I think that's super important if you're able to think creatively like that.
Cheryl, that is another amazing segue to something I wanted to talk about, which is the angle, right? We're talking about the angle, is the importance of branding. So, you know, when we're talking about branding, you know, we're talking about, you know, with your project, being able to convey what it is, you know, who you are and why your project is important. A couple of, I think, examples of branding that I like to draw upon, you know, before found.ee, I was at a dance music company that, you know, we worked a lot of, you know, big dance music releases. You have these massive EDM artists like a Deadmau5 or Marshmello, you know, that make music that is, you know, I wouldn't say revolutionary in any ways, but their branding is so good. You know, Deadmau5 comes on stage with a, you know, big light up mouse head, right? Marshmello has this like marshmallow mask that he wears. Like, the branding is so good that it naturally draws people in and it gives people something to latch onto. It gives people a reason to support you beyond just the music itself, a concept for them to wrap their heads around. Metal bands are also, you know, masters of branding. So, you know, when you're so Cheryl, you know, when you were talking about the angle that you were going for with this sort of with the train album project, you know, I wanted to ask you about branding. You know, what's the importance of branding to you, and how have you been you know, gone about asserting your brand in your music?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that there's sort of two elements when I think of branding. And I mean, honestly, like, I teach a course on branding and like what that means, and it like the fonts and colors and how do you make those choices. And I'll just start with like one of the things that I think is like what's important to you value wise, and your likes and dislikes, whether we're talking about fonts or we're talking about sort of bigger picture stuff. But branding is the overlap between what's the value of your ideal fan. Like, I'm picturing like one of these, like, you know, just draw 2 circles. You guys, I'm left-handed, so everything I draw and write is really sloppy. But so let's just say that this circle is my values, and this, oh my God, it's backwards. The camera's backwards. And this circle is my fans' values. This is branding in the middle, where what you like and want is overlapping with what your fans like and want. So I'll just say that. And then for me, it comes down to story and authenticity. So who I am for my fans is and like, I don't know, you think about Daft Punk and Marshmello and all this stuff where they like clearly like have a shtick. That's a choice. My choice is like, I am the same everywhere. Like how I, small little annoying dog barking downstairs, sorry about that. How I am on this call is the same as if I were on a Zoom call with my fans. It's the same as I am with my friends. Like, I talk fast, I have a lot of energy, I'm super passionate. Like, I am like, I no holds back emotionally. Like, I'll tell you any story, I'll tell you how I felt about that story. Like, that's part of my brand, is that just being very, very real and very committed to like other people being in a space where they can feel like they can do the same, right? And then the other part of it, and I've seen most of the things that have really gotten success and legs have had story, have had something that was so clear that you could put it in a headline. You don't need to explain for 10 hours like what the thing is, right? Like, I'm the first person that made an album on a cross-country train. Period. End of story. Like, that's like a publicist's dream headline. Like, can we get some press, please? Like, and I did, right? And it was really easy to talk about, right? Anytime you have something that's unique or interesting, like, I was the only female on the New Age Grammy ballot. right? I was the only person that had never won before. Like there are things that like you can use to sort of get someone to turn their head and be like, I would like to write a story. I'd like you on my podcast. I'd like to cross promote with you. Because it calls to them for some reason. So story and authenticity are sort of my branding angles, but I also am always thinking about my fans, and community is really important to me as well. I mean, if you go to my Instagram, you'll see the outfit that I wore to the Grammys was this top with a huge ball gown skirt, and the top was made up of about 100 different signatures. My fans sent me signatures and I put them on little florets, and it got featured in Vogue. So like that, like I was like, hey fans, do you want to come to the Grammys with me? Because I literally had been talking about getting a Grammy for 20 years. Like since I started my email list, it almost became like a joke. Like I'm out to get a Grammy. I wasn't even a member of the Recording Academy for 8 years until I like learned that that's what a thing you needed to do. So bringing the fans in and like being community, like community is part of my brand, like telling everyone what I'm up to, being really, 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 really transparent with a lot of things, both inside of my musician community in Amplify, my mastermind, and in the Key of Success, like sharing how I spend my money. I just did a post on that, to like saying, hey, this is the story. This is what was so awful about this story. And this is what's so wonderful. And I want to bring you in on it. So yeah.
I love that. That dress thing is so cool. I'm gonna look up a photo when you hop off this call.
Yeah, like there's like a whole period of February last month when I was at the Grammys that was like literally every photo is that dress. So I was like like every post is like about that. So yeah.
Amazing. On the topic of community, that's really amazing. I think nurturing and fostering this community is such a good way to, again, get fans to form that emotional connection with you and with other fans, right? And ultimately get them to participate in fandom, right? I think stories of K-pop fandoms are super interesting. When a K-pop band puts up a YouTube video for a new music video, you have legions of K-pop fans who are literally just going and streaming the song, watching a music video over and over again. Not just because they want to watch the video, but because they understand the importance of driving up streams for the overall artist's career. So they'll just go and do it because they're part of this community, and they're involved in this sort of community activity. So again, the community is super important. Gives people a reason to care about your music and your wins. I see a question from Luke. I think this is a good time to answer this. Yeah. Luke asks, do you think it's a good idea in the nurture period to ask fans for their take on artwork concepts, video concepts, developing song ideas? I think what Luke is asking about is specifically this process of co-creation, asking your fans, hey, which album do you like better, et cetera, et cetera.
Yes, I think that's a good idea.
Yeah,
we talked about that already. Yeah. I see the second question from Luke though, and that's the one I thought you were gonna, where he says it's hard to find time to create content for marketing and still write music. Do you recommend hiring folks? I actually think that's a time management issue that you should handle. And it starts with knowing where you are in what I call the musician success cycle. Again, if you are not in the portal for In the Key of Success, get in there. There's a very, very short, free mini course that takes you through the 5 phases. Are you learning and sort of figuring out what's next? Are you in creation mode? Are you in admin mode? This third phase of like doing the branding, updating your website, like putting the metadata in, whatever that are you in phase 4, which is pitching? Like now the thing is ready to go out. So now we got to put it out there. Or are you in phase 5 where you did the pitching, you got the gigs. So now you got to go show up and do the work and monetize and maintain. Or are you you're finishing that and now you're back at like, cool, now what? Like we're always in one of these 5 phases. And maybe this is our second time around the success cycle, or maybe it's our 30th time. But either way, if you can get clear on where you are, right now you're talking about marketing versus making music. So you're talking about probably phase 3, 4, or 5 versus phase 2. So that is why most musicians have overwhelm, because they're trying to do tasks in all 5 phases at once and they have no idea where they are. Therefore, there's no direction and you're not going to move forward, or you will move forward, but at a snail's pace. So I encourage you to get in there. There's also a ton of, I could talk about time management for days. I'm involved in so many things and so many projects, and I sleep 8 hours a night and I have lots and lots of free time because I'm a master of my calendar. And so that is going to be a huge thing. So this is not a hiring conversation. My guess is this is not a hiring conversation, Luke. This is let's get you really clear on what you're working on now, why, yeah, Anastasia, that's what I talk about. There's tons of time management stuff inside of my membership, Amplify. So get in there. I mean, it's like the most valuable thing on the internet right now, and it's monthly, and it's a beautiful community, and it's people that are not just starting out. So like if you're like wondering if music is for you, like it's not for you. It's like people who've been there, done that, and they're like, cool, now what? Like that's the energy. It's like level up vibes, and like let's get masterful at calendars. Let's get masterful at talking to our fans, not just like what are the basics. So just beware that it is kind of like a 201, not a 101 class.
I think that's such a valuable resource. I mean, there's so much out there that, that people give you these sort of, broad, overarching, high level tactics on how you can make good content. But, for to hear from an artist actually about, this is how you manage your time. This is how you address these real problems that creatives face is extremely valuable.
Yeah, it's huge. It's really, really, I mean, Anastasia is saying it, like it is really hard for artists because I think a lot of us, we're super passionate. And give me a 2 in the comments. Who are my multi-passionate people? Like you wear multiple hats because you love a lot of things. Because this is me. Like I love writing for this, but I write for commercials and I write for social justice choirs, and then I have my new age stuff and I like all the projects, right? I see all these twos here, right? So I get you. And that's what's so important about, if you can align get a little woo-woo for a second. If you can align your energy, like if you are in creation mode, if you can get all of the things that you're doing to all be in the same phase, you're not going to have to transition from like writing energy where you're kind of like working with your own muse to like pitching where the energy is going out, right? Like that's really different energy. And when we have to transition from one thing to another, like we as humans are not good at multitasking and not good at shifting our brain from doing one thing to another. There's a study that says the average human being, and I know everyone on this call is above average, I'll just say that, but the average human takes about 23 minutes to get back into whatever flow they were in after being interrupted. So how many times a day does your dog bark or does someone knock on the door and you're like transitioning? So if you're doing a bunch of different things because you're multi-passionate, you need to have structures that support you in all of those things, like really good calendar habits, like an accountability group and a coach. That's what Amplify is for at an affordable price. Like these are structures that really work for me, calendars and accountability specifically, because it is really hard as an artist to like say, I want to do this. It's like picking kids. I want to do this project over this one, but I really want them both to be done. Cool. Let's do the work to figure out which one is going to leverage the other projects, which one's going to like help build the fan. Like what's the main goal right now that you're going after? And which one of these many things that you could do is going to support it the most, the fastest. Let's do that thing. And then all the other things will sort of be leveled up without having done anything. That's sort of how I look at prioritizing. I can digress for days on this stuff. So carry on.
Very massive tips. I love that. Cool. So okay, so course correcting a little bit in our journey. I want to come back to our sort of 3 pillars of growing your audience. The last part that I wanted to talk about was what we described as your means of reaching your fans, right? Your means of communicating with your fans. Driving things like email lists, SMS, followers, subscribers, listeners, all of that good stuff. I wanted to start with email because I know, Cheryl, you are an email wizard. And that's something I did want to pick your brain about. Obviously, emails and phone numbers are such a high value good, and owning them, owning the means to communicate, with your fan base is extremely valuable. SMS is also now entering the conversation as something that a lot more artists are focusing on. I think email is the sort of gold standard that we evaluate everything by. But I think recent studies where they were saying that email open rates are something like 20 to 30%. For every email that you send, while SMS open rates are something like 90+%.
Yeah.
Just think about text on your phone. It's obviously a little bit more intrusive, but if a fan is giving you their phone number, they're probably a little bit further along in that fan journey than another user. There are a lot of methods of gaining new emails, of gaining new phone numbers. I think the one sort of underlying thing to keep in mind is that, again, emails and phone numbers are a high value good. So, in obtaining this high value good from your fan, what can you provide them in return? So one example I wanted to give is with SMS. I have seen a lot of the artists that I've worked with be really successful with SMS signups by literally just offering to text back, in the first hour that people sign up. So we set our user up, with a phone that has the community app on it, for example, where they can just message back and they post on socials or something. Hey, sign up for my SMS list. I will be replying to messages, for the next hour. So, in return for the fan, giving the artist their phone number, the artist is essentially giving them back, recognition, a little bit of their time, and makes the fan feel good, and it incentivizes the fan to provide their phone number, right? So Cheryl, the floor is yours. Email, SMS. Are you on SMS?
No, I'm not. Like, my text is like the one place that people don't bother me, and I don't want to like. I as a user, like, I'm a hard pass on SMS. I think it's like, there's so many other ways to like be engaging with people right now, with musicians that I'm a fan of. But I think, I can see it being, I would use it as, I would do that hour thing for sure, like schedule in an hour, and I would just leave people a bunch of voice messages, and then I would have some bot take over and get them to sign up for my email list. Like, I'd be like, cool, what's the best email? Because I'm not going to be hanging out here in text. But then they have my cell, like, that's weird. So I don't have experience using that. I've only ever done email. I know I'm very good at email. I'm good at writing and communicating through email. So like, my copy is great and it's super authentic. Like, one of the biggest tips that I give to people, and now is slowly becoming a pet peeve when I don't see musicians doing this, is write your email list, your emails, as if you're writing to one person. So don't write like, hey everybody, how's it going? Like, they know it's an email list, but like, the more you can make it feel personal and use the merge tags and things like that, we're not going to get into the tech of what that is, but like, so that people see their first name, so that they feel like you are talking to them. Like, I've literally had people be like, are you writing me personally? I can't tell if this is an email list or not. And that is like the biggest compliment, right? That's what you want. You want people to feel like you are writing to them personally, because you like, right? So, yeah, what was the question?
I just wanted to talk about it. It's just great to pick your brain. I wanted to ask as well, like, what are the types of things that you are sending emails about? How do you provide value, content of value, to your users every email to keep them opening and keep them reading?
Yeah, well, I have a bunch of different nurture series written. In my Rock Your Email List course, you figure out how to write 30 pieces of content and divide into 10 sort of segments, stories about your life, transitions about in your life, stories about songs, and then shining a light on other things. So I write those. And then when I'm not doing an album release or a show, or there's some big news or something like a Grammy nomination, like, I send people through those nurture series, and I send them every 2 weeks. So if you think about it, 30 emails times 2 weeks, if you have nothing going on for 60 weeks, over a year, you can be engaging with people. Like, you can, like, if you get kidnapped by aliens, they will be getting communications from you for 60 weeks, right? If you set this up right. It took me about 2 weeks, not super focused on it, to write all of the content, and then sort of batch it in groups of 4 to 5 different emails, pull from the different categories. So I know that my fans are getting emails, and I'll get replies. And I'm like, oh, that's where they are in that journey, right? Because they're all automated based on whenever someone signs up. And I only write my list when there's something to talk about. So I don't stress every month. I used to, but I don't anymore. Stress like, oh my God, I have to send my email list to a newsletter. Don't ever send newsletters. People don't read them anymore. We are a one topic content consuming society right now. We go to Instagram, we see one photo or video, there's one caption. We go to the next thing. Like, no one's reading newsletters anymore. No one wants to, like, when they see too much stuff happening, they don't know what to do. They don't know what's important to you. So you're not going to get any action, any engagement on those. Split up the newsletter into different pieces of content if you've got that much stuff to say. So I just write when I think of something, because I've set up all those nurture series, and I've set up the Rise series, the like sort of automatic, like, hey, have you been to my store recently? I've got this new t-shirt or postcards or whatever. And like, all of that is set and go. And I tweak it every 6 months. I make sure that stuff is still relevant, that links are still working. And I don't stress about it. Like, I paused all of those series when the Grammy nomination happened, because I was like, let's talk about the dress. Let's talk about the signatures. Let's talk about like this what this means to me. And like, let me thank you so much for being part of this journey for 20 years. Like there was a lot for me to say in different emails. So I kind of paused all of the series that people were in so that I could kind of communicate for a couple months during the nomination and when the Grammys actually happened. So, but other than that, I kind of like let the series roll and take it from there.
Is there a frequency that you found that works for you in terms of the ideal amount of times to message per week, per month?
I think per week can get too much for a nurture series. Like you just want to remind people that you're there. If you don't have anything that you're really promoting, like once a month is fine. Once every 2 weeks is fine. But then you want to change it up when you've got something like, hey, I've got an album coming out. Like during my album weeks, especially if I'm playing a game like to get on a Billboard chart for New Age happens to be sales based. So I need everyone to buy my CD. I don't need them to stream it. I need them to buy it. So I'm like, today is iTunes day. Everyone go onto iTunes and buy it. And then like tomorrow is Amazon day. And I will do a series, 1 email a day for 7 days. So there's no answer to the frequency question. There's no like magic button. It depends on what you're doing, when you're doing it, and why you're doing it.
Totally. Super, super helpful. Cool. So we talked about email. Let's see. I wanted to talk a little bit about tactics for socials as well. Obviously growing your social followers as much as we hate, being active on social media platforms. That is one place that you're able to reach your users. Obviously the world uses social media, so it's a good place to reach your users at. In our last webinar, actually, with Jeremy Gruber, he was telling us about this really cool sort of formula that that the heads of TikTok have communicated to him about. There's this sort of ideal content format that works really well for TikTok. He calls it the sort of 3-act joke, the 3-act story where you provide a premise, set up, and a punchline. Essentially, framing your TikTok video in this way is proven to drive more views and more engagement and ultimately more fans. It serves your ability to ultimately grow your fan base and communicate with those fans. Some other sort of cool tactics and tricks to try. Whenever you see a new social media platform push a new content vertical, whether it's Instagram Reels, YouTube Shorts, whatever it is, you should jump on it as quickly as you can. The reason for that is that these platforms, when they do put out new content verticals like that, they always give algorithmic preference to these new content verticals. There's stories of, just early adopters on Instagram Reels who were just rewarded with, a massive amount of views and impressions just for being first to the platform, because the platforms are, sort of prioritizing that higher in their algorithm than the rest of their other content. As Cheryl mentioned, just be active, just be authentic, carve out time for it, just be yourself on socials. So anything to add to that?
Yeah, Cheryl? I think something that I consult for record labels and smaller companies that have rosters of artists, like managers and stuff like that. When you're trying to like be really effective with a lot of different artists, it's like, how can I create content for all these artists monthly and like keep up with all the things? And I really can't stress enough the importance of taking time to automate, to set up your automation systems. Again, here's another system, right? I talk about accountability and Amplify calendars, and like automation is huge, meaning you're putting time in up front for much bigger time return later on. And you're going to save yourself so much time. You're going to start to really, when you're writing all of your content at once and then setting it up to go out over time, the voice gets really clear. You're not like in the middle of touring and then you're like, I got to write my fans. And like, if you haven't gotten really good at writing in your own voice, like if you don't have a blog, if you haven't been someone who loved writing essays in English in high school, like if you're just not a writer, like it's going to be really hard to find that voice. But if you're sitting down and doing it all at once, like it's going to get really clear to you what you want to say, how you say it, how cheeky are you, how like serious are, how hard on sleeve are, like you'll find that flavor that people are going to really start to attract to you. So there's a bunch of reasons why I think it's really important to automate and get a really good system. I use Kajabi. It also hosts my website. It hosts my digital music, so I can actually make sales directly through my email, and they take zero things from it. So if you are, especially if you have like multiple rosters and things like that, I'm going to put a link in here for that because I think that's actually really important. And it's my email system, and you actually get a consult with me if you go through this link in the Gita such. So yeah, I think it's really important to have that system of automation set up. So add that.
Awesome. Cheryl, I think we are at our sort of hour mark right now. So I think this is our sign to wrap up. Appreciate you massively. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. If any sort of final parting thoughts for our attendees?
Yeah, I think I don't see any like really hardcore questions here. So yeah, I think the biggest thing is just get clear on what you want and don't just go through doing what you think other people are doing or what you should do or what the newest, coolest, hopefully coolest thing is. Like, what is it that you actually want for your career right now? And that may change. And what's going to make the biggest difference, the one biggest difference, not the 10 biggest differences, and go learn everything that you can about that. It's phase one, learning and determining what the goal is for this time around the success cycle. If you want to do sync licensing, cool. If you want to do touring, cool. If you want to learn how to mix your own stuff, cool. Those can all be different times around the success cycle. So which one of those should be first? Which one is going to, when you get it done and you succeeded in it and you've sort of gotten some hold on that topic, which one is going to support the other ones as you go through the success cycle? I keep doing this. I have this graphic in my musician success cycle. Again, go to inthekeyofsuccess.com. Everyone sign up. It's free. Get in, do the success cycle. But there's this graphic that I keep using. It's like a spiral where we're like literally just leveling up every time we do this with clarity. So I can't emphasize clarity enough. I do think it's the source of the reason I finally did get nominated for a Grammy as an indie artist with zero team behind me. Like, I don't want to say I should not have, because I did a lot of really smart work to get there, but like, that's not the norm. And I think that clarity and having this framework for years fed into that. And that was my goal, right? Like that was my particular champagne win, what I call the very clear goal that everyone knows when you hit it, you get the champagne out, right? So that clarity is really, 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 really important. So those are my parting words. Get really clear. And if you don't know how to do that, I got so many tools to help you out do that.
Amazing. Cheryl, thank you again. And thank you, all of you attendees for joining. Happy Friday. I hope you have champagne wins of your own. And yeah, happy marketing.
Amazing. Thank you so much for having me.
Bye.
Bye.